You're listening to the AZ Wildcats podcast brought to you by DraftKings. All right, here's the deal. You throw down $5 on a tournament game, and if that team wins, you get $200 in free plays. That simple, that easy. All right, now joined by a man of many hats. Matt, let me ask you this. How many revenue streams are you in right now? Over or under 4?
Oh, definitely under.
Under? Is it just the main 2 then? You got the regular 9 to 5, then Pac-12?
That's right. Yeah.
Well,
are you paying me? How much do I get for this?
That is true. You know what? Matt is such a nice guy. He actually humors me and comes on here for free. But you know what he does get to do? He gets to look at this A that is backing me right now.
That thing is nice.
Right.
I mean, that's the envy of everybody that comes on the show and watches it now, right?
Right. That is true. That is true.
When you say back in the A, you're literally back in the A, like strong.
I'm living it. I've got an ex-teammate of yours, Sean Elliott, behind me. Then Damon Stoudemire, then Lloyd Olson, and the A. So what more do you really need?
How cool was that to see Sean last night?
Dude, you know what's funny about it?
Yeah.
Let's start on that for a second here, because I don't think a lot of people really get, the younger generation really gets what Sean Elliott was to Arizona basketball, who he's everything. Matt, just kind of give the younger crowd a little bit of a synopsis as somebody who played with him.
Well, I still think he's the greatest U of A player ever.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to say it's not close because there have been some pretty dang good players, including.
It's clearly him, though.
It's clearly him. He was, in the late '80s, he was like the original, small forward, 6'8", athletic, could shoot, could dribble. Like he was sort of the predecessor to all these guys like Tracy McGrady and Penny Hardaway and guys that played kind of a positionless wing, but. Think about Lloyd Olson, obviously the key to everything that ever happened at Arizona coming in the early 80s. But, without Sean Elliott, how long does it take for everything to sort of, click over? And, out of Cholla High School, a local kid, he ends up committing to U of A. I mean, it was a pretty unbelievable, almost a miracle that he was in town. When you first saw
Sean Elliott, what were your initial what were just your initial thoughts when you saw him for the first time? Because you're a guy with a pretty nice basketball background yourself. But when you first saw Sean, what were your first thoughts?
Just he was quiet, really a quiet guy. And but like every time I saw him and played with him, and now today just makes me smile. Like his talent level just oozed off the court. And when I was, lucky enough to play with him, obviously, I'd get switched on him every once in a while. Unguardable. I could not guard him, and right. I could guard everybody at least.
Get in line though, Matt. I mean,
what's that?
Get in line on that one. Not a lot of people are guarding Sean Elliott.
Oh man, it was like I said. He just made me smile. He was an incredible teammate. Kind of led by example more than anything. Never forget that shot he hit against Danny Ferry at the top of the key in '89 at the Meadowlands. And 2-time All-Star, I think. He could have been a 10-time All-Star. I think he, in some ways, deferred, to Tim Duncan and David Robinson and those guys. Like he could have been a 25-point-a-game scorer in the NBA, but he was such a great teammate.
Do you think, and real quick, and then we're going to get on to the season here, but anytime we can talk about it, Sean Elliott, I'm going to take that opportunity right there. When you look throughout, and I was telling a younger, I'm talking about this like I'm like 55, but I was talking with a U of A kid about this a while back, and he was wearing a Sean Elliott jersey. He had and I asked him if he knew who it was, and he said he just thought it was just the generic jersey. Well, no, it's not. But you know what's really amazing, Matt, when you really dig down? If you look at the most accomplished players of the past 40 years, let's say the post-Wooden era in Pac-12 or Pac-10, Pac-12 basketball, Sean Elliott is, with a possible inclusion of Gary Payton maybe in there.
Yeah.
But it's Sean. If you're going by accolades, by resume, by numbers, with all due respect to Don McClain, it's Sean there.
Oh, in the Pac-12, yeah. It's like if you think NBA, that changes it.
No. Just
you're
college.
Saying college career. Yeah, there's no one. And Don McClain, it's really cool. Like Don will tell you, hey, Don will say, I'm the all-time leading scorer, but Sean was the best player of all time in the Pac-12 since that time.
Right, for sure. And that's cool to see. All right, now
Yeah.
let's get to what we saw last night. First and foremost, I want to start off with some optimism, and we're going to break down some of the negative parts, obviously. But Matt, just think about where we were at this time last year, where you have a coaching change. You've got a guy coming in, Tommy Lloyd, who I had heard of, didn't know a ton about, Mark Few's right-hand man. If you were to tell me that we were going to be the number 1 seed, and you know what, maybe you lose in the Sweet 16, yes, I'll take that, considering where we were last year.
Yeah, I'll be candid. I was somewhat skeptical about the hire and I didn't know Tommy at all. I'd never met him,
Right.
Didn't know anything about him other than he was an assistant at Gonzaga. It was more about the idea of a 20-year assistant coach. Why has he been an assistant for so long? Why is he not a head coach? That it just never happened. And
Right.
like the amount of times it did happen, you could almost count on like 2 fingers. And where it was successful,
Right.
At a big time program, at a major top 10 program. I'd have to say the only one I could think of is Roy Williams at Kansas, coming from Carolina. He was an assistant for a pretty long time. So I just, the idea of it seemed risky. However, I met Tommy when he was hired, took him out to lunch here. I called down to the U of A, got the secretary down there. Within 2 days, I was having lunch with him. I mean, he was a man of the people. And I loved him the first time I met him. You could tell he had a lot of confidence, a lot of belief in what he was doing, but not cocky at all. Like he just, like nothing really seemed to faze him. And I thought, man, this guy's pretty easygoing for the job he's taking on. And every month it seemed to get better. He just surprised me every month.
I think what also helped him a little bit is, even though he's not a U of A alum, he was on the staff at Gonzaga. He saw some of Lute's best teams. He saw 01. He saw 03. He saw 05. He saw some of Sean Miller's mid-2010 teams right there. So he's fully aware of what Arizona basketball is capable of. It's not like you're bringing in a guy, from the East Coast that, maybe remembers this guy with gray hair that was a coach there. But he knows what this program can be. And I think that was an important, maybe a little bit of an overlooked part about the hire of him.
Yeah, I think so too. Kelso Washington, he was a West Coast guy, even though he loves the Beastie Boys. He was a West Coast guy, and
great reference.
Yeah, he knew, and that's what, when they were at Gonzaga, is interesting. I asked him about this. I said, what was your guys' strategy to become Gonzaga? And he goes, look, it wasn't like we didn't have some master plan and we were going to do, these 10 things, and we were going to become this incredible West Coast power that nobody thought of in Spokane. He said, we just kind of rolled up our sleeves and started working.
Right.
And he said, we did it we did it every way possible. We turned every stone over. We recruited really hard. We recruited in Europe. We developed players. We hedged our bets with, okay, we're going to try to get this guy, but we're developing this, another guy that's on the team. So he understood, they wanted to be Arizona, I would say. Mm-hmm. That was their goal. And quite frankly, they did it as well as anybody, right?
Now let's talk a little bit, obviously, about last night. Now, you and I were texting a little bit back and forth actually a lot back and forth during the game. The one thing, though, that generally the losses that hurt me the most, and I don't mean to throw salt in an open wound here, because I'm going to ask you about this as well. But I was only 6 at the time, but 89 hurts because that, let's be honest here, Arizona was a better basketball team than UNLV. Yeah. Santa Clara hurts. 98 hurts. It didn't hurt as much just because you're just coming off a title, so you at least got that. 05 obviously is the absolute killer.
Yeah.
Matt, the one thing that I can reconcile at least a little bit last night is that Houston, I felt, at least that day, deserved to win that game. They looked like the better team on that game. Whereas I think with 89, if you guys are to play 10 times, you're winning the overwhelming majority of those games.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I'll say this, Mike, I felt that way 1 minute into the game.
Right.
Like how long, how athletic, how quick, how strong, and how good their defense was, stood out to me a minute in. It didn't really change in 39 minutes later. And one thing that hit me as I was watching last night, and I looked it up this morning, they just there was a feeling of kind of men versus boys.
Right.
I'm not going to overrate it that much, but it just seemed like they were the older, stronger team.
But your age, and again, I don't want to spill secrets here, but I thought your text I thought was a good point though, where you're like, we got a lot of sophomores here, and then you've got a lot of grad kids, fifth-year guys, and you know this better than anybody, Matt. There's a big difference between being 19 and 22, or 20 and 23. The difference is immense.
It's immense, and it's also why Kentucky lost to a 15. Kentucky. Anybody think Kentucky has less talent than St. Peter's?
Right.
Well, they lost because they lost to a bunch of guys that had been through it. And so I looked it up, Mike. The top 5 scorers at Houston, they have played in 640 basketball games in their career. Arizona, their top 5 scorers, 320, half of it. And so it's like, think about this. It's not just the games. It's twice as many games, twice as many practices, twice as many weightlifting sessions, twice as many times you've lost and had to get over that and get better and get, hardened, if you will, through twice, working through leagues and non-conference and tournaments, twice as many of that kind of thing. It's an overwhelming bit of experience, or part of experience that they've had. And it showed. They were a good team. Kelvin did a great job. They made Arizona comfortable. And I think Tommy made a really good point after the game. If Arizona played Houston 5 times, I don't know how many they'd win or lose. But after the 5th time they played them, I think they would beat them the majority of the time because they would learn how to play against that style, the tempo, the athleticism. Their skill set would learn how to play against it. A very tough. And I'm not taking anything away from Houston, believe me, because I love Kelvin. You probably don't know this. One of Kelvin's first years, the 1989, you just talked about it. We played in the first round of the Pac-12 tournament against them. They had won the play-in game because there were 10 teams.
Okay.
They were the 8th seed. We were the 1. We were probably a 30-point favorite. We almost lost. We won by, I think, 2 points or 3 points or whatever. We won at the very end. And all I can remember is no one played harder than Washington State.
Right.
They just played as hard as anyone we played.
Right.
And he's been doing that, for 35 years.
All right, let me tell you first, DraftKings Sportsbook app, code word PHNX. All right, here's the deal. Throw down $5 on tournament games, and if you're a new customer, you get $200 in free plays. That simple, that easy. 21 and up, Arizona only. You got a gambling problem, call 1-800-NEXT-STEP. My DraftKings pick of the week, well, it was Arizona, so I'm going to try another one now. I'm going to back the pack. I'm going to go UCLA tonight against North Carolina. I've got mixed opinions about it, but you know what, Matt? At the end of the day, I'm always going to root for a Pac-12 team outside of ASU. Is that dumb? How do you feel about that as a letterman yourself?
I'm always going to root for Pac-12 teams in the tournament. Now, UCLA, to me, it's the flip of Arizona, Houston. UCLA seems like the more experienced team, slower pace,
right?
Veteran dudes. I'm with you.
All right. So now let's talk about what Arizona needs to do from a roster perspective. I think a couple things stuck out for me right there. First and foremost, and again, Kerr's hobbled. We get that. But you got to get quicker. You got to get a little bit more explosive at the guard area. I don't think that there's any doubt about that. Houston was just kind of able to get where they wanted on the court. And that's what bothered me. That's what worried me more about this game than the TCU game is that I felt Arizona would catch up with TCU. There was a point, like you said, I'm not as smart as you, so it took me a little bit longer. But there was a point, though, where it's like, man, these dudes are getting whatever shot they want, Matt. They're getting in the key. They're passing it out. Arizona's got to get quicker and a little bit more explosive there. What do you think? Yeah,
more athletic. I think all those things, older, quicker. I think it makes sense. Just better all around. And I think, a lot of it is Tommy had less than 1 year to put his system into these players that haven't, all the nuance of his pick and roll stuff and all the nuance of how he defends and all that. Again, I'm not taking anything away from Houston, but Sampson's been doing it with this team and with his guys, and there's continuity there. There's zero continuity with Tommy so far, and now he'll have some. So I'm probably most interested. And I know some people got on, Azuolas Tubelis for his last couple games. They weren't, up to his standards. I'm kind of most interested in what happens to him in the offseason, like, how they develop him, how much he works.
What would you do, Matt Muehlebach, if you've got a summer with the Azuolas and you're trying to make it? What is Matt Muehlebach doing?
I think the first thing is, everyone's going to say his jumper. He's got to shoot it better. He's got to shoot it better from the outside. But I think everything. It's becoming more athletic. It's getting in the weight room. It's becoming more confident. It's becoming, doing things better with the ball. He's got to finish around the rim better. He missed a lot of, contested shots against TCU and Houston. It's just, again, getting older, getting better. I think from the mental standpoint, he's got to realize how big and strong and good he could be.
Right.
And be, confident. You know what I'll do? I'll tell you, and I answered it sort of generally. I would get a tape of, and I'm not, is it Sabonis?
Domantas Sabonis.
Domantas Sabonis. I would get a tape of Sabonis, and I would start watching it all summer long.
Okay. Now, let me ask you this. Now, I remember this very well. Michael Dickerson, obviously, and again, I'm not comparing Tubelis to Dickerson because Dickerson was a much better player than Tubelis. That's no slight to Tubelis. Mike D was just a different cat. If you saw it, you just knew. But when Dickerson struggled against Kentucky and North Carolina and Kentucky, I remember this very well. That at least it was quoted that Lute was asked after the season, what did you talk about with Mike? And he said, we didn't talk about it because we don't worry about it happening again. That was just a blip. Is this something from your perspective? Do you talk with the Azuolas about this? Or do you kind of take the approach of, he knows he didn't play well, we can move on? What is your take on that?
I think a lot of it has to do with what the relationship is with the Azuolas, and Tommy probably has a good feel. Like, is that the kind of thing? Some guys are motivated by going back and looking at the tape and saying, "Hey, I need to get better. Let me see what I did wrong." Some guys need a different approach. I would probably talk about it a little bit. Like, I would probably bring it up and say, "Look, you need to get better. You had a great year. There were times that you could legitimately say Tubelis might have been the MVP of the entire conference.
Correct.
And there were stretches. He was magnificent at stretches. And so, again, it's a young kid. It's a sophomore. What does he look like when he's a senior? That's what you look at.
And nobody's going. The reason I think that people you're holding him to a higher standard because you know what he can do. If Tubelis was a guy that, you're thinking to yourself, all right, this is basically a 7-5 guy or something. I'll give you an example. We all love Gene Edgerson here. Nobody was going into the season, though, saying, man, I need 18 and 14 out of Gene. That wasn't his game. You know what Azuolas can do. So you've got to be complimented just that you're having that talk because people know what you're capable of.
100%. You say it as out of respect because he's got a higher ceiling than a lot of kids.
Okay, now. I want to talk about next year's roster a little bit. But again, DraftKings Sportsbook app, code word PHNX. Throw down $5 on tournament games, $200 in free plays if you're a new customer. Matt, the Kansas City Chiefs got rid of Tyreek Hill right here.
Yes.
How do you, if you were looking and pegging where you would be Chiefs over or under 12 wins next season, what's Matt Muehlebach thinking if he was on that app?
On 12, probably under.
Do you think that's too big of a loss to come back from?
Well, I actually think it's what they did was they secured their long-term
exactly
Patriots way. It was the greatest. It was an unbelievable move, actually.
Right, where it just kind of takes you back a little bit. You bring in Juju, so that's not a bad consolation prize. Juju. Right?
Yeah, you get 5 draft picks, and the Patriots. That's how the Patriots did it. They never signed gigantic free agents.
Just so people know, too, a lot of people wonder, Juju Smith-Schuster, no relation to John Schuster. I know that people do think that from time to time. They are wrong. Okay.
That's right.
Andre Vera says, now I want to – Matt, you keep your nose to the NBA pretty closely. You got some – I think it's fair to say some pretty good buddies in some pretty high positions in the NBA. Yeah. If you're advising Christian Koloko, Dalen Terry – what would be your advice there?
Well, I think you can make an argument that if they play really well in the workouts, they could be somewhere late in the first round, possibly. Mm-hmm. That's where you'd start. And I would probably argue, hey, go one more year at least. Koloko's going to be a senior, but go one more year and move yourself into the top 15 in the first round. That would be my argument for both of them.
You know what? I think Koloko's got an interesting. I think if Koloko comes back, and we saw this during the offseason, we saw this during the Red Blue, Koloko's actually got a sneaky effective jump shot. I think what you do is you bring Koloko back and you say, listen, everybody knows what you can do defensively. You're never going to be Kareem in the low post, nothing personal. But you know how you can really make yourself a real commodity in the NBA is if you're that guy that can stretch the court. And I think if you sell, I think you can sell him on that, saying you're going to get 1 to 2 of those shots a game. And it's not like you're asking Umar Ballo to do it. I mean, we've certainly seen that Koloko's got a pretty soft, feathery touch there for a guy that big.
Yeah, and I just think that's an awesome point, and I think him just getting bigger makes him a more long-term guy in the NBA. And I'll say this too, I got to give you credit, Dalen Terry. He's better than I thought, and I'll say this about him last night. He was one of 2 players. Mathurin didn't have a great shooting night, but Mathurin still attacked Houston, and they were still afraid of him. And again, there were reasons why, but it wasn't because of his lack of athleticism and ability and all of that. And he attacked him. He was not afraid of him. And Dalen Terry was the same way.
Right.
And I thought Dalen had a really good game last night. Hell, I'd tell Dalen Terry, come back, learn how to play the point even more, get that jump shot even better, which has been improving all season long. He's got a chance to be an incredible. Like again, his dream is he's the next Andre Iguodala.
If he comes back, don't you have the feel that he could be a guy that averages 14, 6, and 6?
Absolutely.
Something like that.
He's going to get 2 triple doubles next year.
Right.
If he comes back, and remember, he's a guy that I don't even think he ever scored 20 this year.
Right.
He was such a facilitator, and I think next year he could be like when Andre became more of a scorer. We always think of Andre, the recency bias.
Right.
I just think of him with the Warriors as that 6-man, incredible defender. What a teammate. He was an NBA All-Star that led the Sixers in scoring for how many years?
Putting up 20 a game, and it's not like he's shooting 36% from the field or something. He's shooting fairly efficient numbers too.
Right. And I think that's where Dalen wants to get to, right, is to become more of a scorer, more of a, and increase all those numbers across.
He's a guy too that he's got we talked about this a little bit last week. He's got, by the way, when we hang out next week, drinks on me, obviously, since I'm not paying you for any of this. But he's got a little Sean Marion in him in this regard, and that the release is weird, but it's a soft touch. It got to the point as the season went on when the ball was rolling around the rim that it's like, there's something there. Again, you'd like the shot to be a little bit more the perfection there, but it's not like it's a lost cause. It's not like it's Rajon Rondo.
Well, and 2 things on that. One is, as a fan, when you watch someone shoot, you feel good or you don't feel good when he throws it up, right?
Right.
I think in the last 2 months, you felt really good when Dalen shot the ball, especially from the corner. He loved the corner. And then I think the other thing is he hit big shots. He had a tendency that whenever Arizona needed a shot, it seemed like he was there to make one.
Right. What would you do, Matt, before we sign off right here? And I want to tell everybody, too, about this sign behind me, this thing that's literally backing the A. All right, backing my A. It's SaturdayNeon.com. These people are fantastic. They hooked me up. Here's the deal. You go there, you use code word PHNX for 10% off discount, and you can get this thing right there at 10% off. It makes me look cool. You guys look cooler than me, so imagine how cool you'll look with this right there. SaturdayNeon.com. They got everything there, all your college choices. All right, Matt. Point guard U obviously was a moniker under Lute Olson that, was, and it just made perfect sense. Your guy, Steve Kerr, then, heck, even people you forget about, your Matt Offix, who we were talking about the other day. Then you get into the real kind of the cream of the crop where you're going Damon, you're going Bibby, you're going JT, you're going Gardner, Reggie in there.
Yeah.
I say that because when you look at Kerr Kriisa, he's obviously an effective player. He's shown a lot of moments. Do you look at him as a guy that is your starting point guard for the next 2 years, playing 35 minutes a game? Is he more than of a 1.5, a little bit of a 6th? What do you look at him for at that position?
I don't know.
Yeah,
and I guess that's the answer. It depends on who. If Tommy Lloyd brings in what was the kid from Gonzaga last year? Suggs.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if he brings in the
right.
third pick in the draft, like,
right.
Who knows how that's going to play out. But, I remember, like you just said it, think of over the years, Reggie Geary was a 3-man his first 2 years. Then he was a 2, then he was a 1. Steve Kerr was a 2 for his first 3 years. Then he played the 1 his last year.
And never turned the ball over his entire season.
Ever. I think he had 31 turnovers in 38 ridiculously hard games. Like it was crazy. But, Kriisa just got to get better. Again, I mentioned those games that those guys played. Kriisa's played, this is what's shocking, he's played 41 games.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he's literally a freshman right now.
Right.
And, like you said, he's a very effective player. He wasn't perfect. I think he ran into a little bit of a buzzsaw against Houston. He also probably wasn't 100% healthy. But again, he's got to get better, and it depends what the personnel. He might be a guy that does move over to the 2. Remember, he was with the 2 last year when Campo and him played together for 8 games.
Right.
So I'm not sure. I think a lot of it is personnel driven, but he seems like a kid that he's going to get better. Like I foresee that kid really working.
Right. Matt Muehlebach, can't thank you enough for coming on, my man. As always, you are the absolute best, and I'm holding you to hanging out next week.
Let's do it, man. It's been a great year. I mean, like you said, Tommy Lloyd, Arizona's in an unbelievable spot. Disappointing last night, but it's all good.
Just got to put things in perspective right there.
Absolutely.
So, you know what? All right, Matt. Appreciate you again, my man. For Matt Muehlebach, I'm Mike Luke. You've been listening to the AZ Wildcats podcast.